Recording. Okay. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Town of Ashford, regular scheduled meeting for Monday, June 8th, excuse me, starting at 7:02. And we have a pretty full schedule tonight, so we will get going with first off of calling to order and the seating of alternates. So in this case, as I'm still waiting, I don't
I'm
see.
I'm letting Jerry in now.
Okay, very good. Add him to the on list. And if anyone sees Tom come on during the course of events, please shout out. You will not be chastised in any way. Um, okay, so that would leave, in this case, excuse me a second here, as Stephanie was seated for Jerry, and then Jerry came in and stood for the upset. Well, we can seat them both, basically. So I would like to seat Stephanie for Tom Hastings. And we'll seat Doug for the open position that we have. So all of our alternates are seated. And moving on to item two. So that would give us a full complement of nine voting members, Caspian, just to make you aware. Um, Approval of minutes from April 13th, 2026. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Janet. I'll move. We approve.
Janet, is there a second?
This is
I'll
Stephanie. I'll
second.
second.
I think Jerry got in there quick beforehand. No flies on him. Okay, discussion on the minutes from April 13th. Hearing none from the commissioners. Those that were in attendance, all those who are approve the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions from not being here? So moved, unanimous. All right. Moving on to public comments. Public comments, again, opening up to the public for items not to be discussed, such as the hearing, as we will have time to be given public input on the hearing period. Um, Anything that the public would like to put out there? I'm looking for electronic hands. I'm looking for human hands waving at me. Hearing none at this point, we will move on. Uh, Bills, receiving from the Chronicle, a bill for $368.90 and has been paid by the Land Use Office. Any other bills that didn't make the list there, Michael?
Nothing on my end. Nope.
Okay, thank you. Correspondence. We did receive a notice of certain planning and zoning matters in neighboring municipalities from Mansfield. Um, the changes are 94 pages, so I'll be going over each and every. No, you can go over those on your own. Um, so again, pursuant to PA 87307, Zoning, Planning, and Inland Wetlands Commission and Zoning Boards of Appeals are required to notify the clerk of any adjoining municipality of the pendency of any application, petition, request, or plan concerning any project on site in which any portion of the property affected by a decision or such board is within 500 feet of the boundary of an adjoining municipality. A significant portion of the traffic to the completed projects on the site will use streets within the adjoining municipality to enter or exit the site. A significant portion of the sewer or water drainage from the project on the site will flow through and significantly impact the drainage or sewage system within the adjoining municipality. Or lastly, water runoff from the improved site will impact streets or other municipal or private property within the adjoining municipality. So again, the changes that were proposed revisions that were made to definitions, non-residential use table, and notes, and Article 6 removal, there will be a hybrid meeting or in person at Mansfield Town Hall on June 15th, 2026, going over those changes. at 6:05 p.m. And you can contact the Department of Planning and Development at Mansfield if you have any other questions for that. Any input, any questions from commissioners? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the public hearing for this evening. And the public hearing, again, involves the what we hope is the completion, the final draft presentation of the Plan and Conservation of Development for 2026, 2036. Before we start in on the hearing, I just want to thank the members of the subcommittee for the Plan of Conservation and Development. These folks have worked feels like longer than 18 months. We started this process November 14th, 2024. There were all too many frequent weekly meetings that these folks did not complain about, that they gave of their time and gave of themselves to work on this outside of both normal meeting for some of the commissioners and their own private time frame. So I just like to commend uh, Ms. Christine Acebo, Ms. Nora Galvin from the public who were instrumental, and we thank them wholeheartedly for their efforts. I also want to thank Commissioner Janet Bellamy and Commissioner Mark Schnobel, as well as ex-Commissioner Luther Brock, for their efforts. Tireless, they worked, they were very dedicated. And again, I think members of other committees could tell you that when they saw us here each and every week when they were coming in to see theirs, I think they were quite impressed with the level of commitment to these folks. So again, I want to thank all the members of the subcommittee. Um, in doing so, we will open the public hearing at this point. The way the public hearing will go, similar process that we followed in the past. We have I want to call it a completed document. The meat is there. I mean, everything that is important to Ashford and planning and zoning and the plan of conservation and development is in there. We do have a little bit of tweaking to do. It's really some publication stuff, a couple of endorsements, actually a couple of acknowledgments in there also. And there's an appendice that we want to add that has the results from the survey that we conducted during the process for this. But what I'm going to do at this point is we're going to have Mike D'Amato, our zoning enforcement officer, offer up the information regarding a POCD, what it is, what it is not, its intent is, what we've put together. And I'll also ask the subcommittee members, putting them on the spot, if there's anything that they would like to share regarding their input or the process or anything regarding the POCD. After that, we'll open it up to the public to give comment to those of you who had the opportunity to review the POCD. And again, share your comments with us. Anything you think should not be in there. Tell us how much you liked it, anything like that. And at that point, we'll open it up to the commissioners to have any discussion based on both the public input and what they have reviewed in the document itself. So in that case, we'll open up the presentation to Mike.
Thanks, Jeff. So just to kind of do a level set, I wanted to go over a couple of things that many folks heard probably in greater detail earlier on through the process. But just for anybody that is coming in later in the game or wasn't able to attend, etc. So the Plan of Conservation and Development is a document that all towns are required to adopt and prepare. It is sort of a foundational document that is meant to inform at a very high level planning and other policy decisions over the 10-year horizon of the document. And just to give you a quick quick overview or kind of a more succinct narrative. So it's an advisory document that provides the blueprint for a municipality's future by identifying town needs, setting goals, and outlining potential strategies for achieving those goals. Though the POCD does not specifically mandate what a town commission, department, or organization is required to do, the plan guides these efforts over the next 10 years by offering objectives, perspective policies, frameworks, etc., for the town to implement and create a coordinated long-term vision. The plan addresses multiple aspects of town-wide planning and government, including economic development, environmental stewardship, infrastructure, housing, etc. And the execution of the document is carried out by multiple town boards, agencies, staff, commissions, community groups, etc. So, this is a document that is largely sort of strapped to the to-do list of the Planning and Zoning Commission, but a lot of these policies and a lot of these goals cannot be quarterbacked solely by PZC. So this is meant to be a guide to help create a more consistent pattern for decision making, but is really a community document. And for those of you who have looked at the POCD, both the current document, which would be replaced by what's been proposed, and the draft that is subject of the hearing tonight, the formats are very similar. The content has largely been developed in coordination with the agencies that are listed. So 3 or 4 people, as Jeff mentioned, on the subcommittee did not just get together and draft all of this in a vacuum. There was various points of engagement, obviously with the public, but also with those boards and commissions to make sure that this was not just a situation where the P&Z has pulled together a document that they thought was important and did not have sort of front end endorsement from those boards and commissions. So a lot of the content that is here, though it is being adopted by the PZC, was created by those agencies directly. The only other thing that I wanted to mention as far as public engagement, we did a couple of things. Last spring, we had a community engagement session or public outreach session at Knowlton Hall, where we had more focused conversations about varying aspects of the POCD, from development to conservation, et cetera. That was very well attended. We had over 100 people, I think, if memory serves. And we also did an online and paper-based survey, which we had around 200 responses for. And we took both formatted questions where they answered our questions and selected options that we had prepared as part of the survey. We also had open-ended questions where folks were able to just write what their comments were directly, which we then kind of synthesized. And we had, I think, over 100 sort of handwritten responses from survey takers as well. The last thing that I wanted to mention is that state statute does mandate that we have to adopt this document. It mandates that we have to update it at least once every 10 years. And if we don't do so, the town potentially becomes ineligible for discretionary state funding for certain grants and other things. There are a lot of eligibility requirements, and having this document in place is one of them. There are 9 things that the statute says that must be considered as part of the process. And I'll read those quickly and paraphrase. But it is number 1 is the need for affordable housing, the need for protection of existing and potential public surface and ground drinking water supplies, the use of cluster development and other development patterns to the extent consistent with soil type, terrain, and infrastructure capacity within the municipality. We have to also consider both the regional and state POCD. In this case, the state POCD is approximately 2 years old. There is not a regional POCD. The Regional Council of Government does not have one, so there is not one to consider in that case. We also have to look at the physical, social, economic, and governmental conditions and trends. We have to review the needs of the municipality, including but not limited to human resources, education, health, housing, recreation, social services, public utilities, public protection, transportation, and circulation within the town. and cultural and interpersonal communities. We have to look at energy efficient patterns of development, the protection and preservation of agriculture, and the needs, potential future needs for technology and related infrastructure in the community. There are a bunch of things that the town also may consider, but those are the musts that have to be sort of incorporated there. Um, and so with that, I think I will pause for now and hand it over. I don't know if there's anybody on the subcommittee that has anything else that they'd like to add.
Thank you, Mike. Janet or Mark?
Um, well, I'd like to thank Jeff for shepherding us and organizing all of this, which at times was pretty daunting. And getting all the groups to submit in a timely manner was but everyone did, and I think the whole every group from town participated, which was great. What we were looking for, and the public participated. And I'd like to thank Mike for his invaluable assistance as well. Um, I had a couple comments on it. Can I make those now, or should I wait?
If you would wait, please.
Okay.
Anything from you, Mark?
No, I'll just second what Janet said. I thought it was a great experience. Um, yeah, I mean, everyone worked really well together. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and for my part, again, I'm just deeply touched, motivated by the people that rose up, wanted to help, and not just, took pot shots from far away. They came in, they worked hard. Um, uh, Christine, her ability to kind of cut through the BS and get to the heart of the matter. Nora's specific nature and her ability to capture so many of the minutes and so many of the changes and so many of the inputs that we had in a document that we could then forward on to Mike and his group to try and put into a format. Again, greatly impressed, very thankful for that. And uh, look forward for 10 years from now. Um, Christine, please go right ahead.
And it looks really pretty, Mike.
Thank you. I think that was certainly a group effort, and we still have some final layout to do, but yeah, we'll get your name underneath all those photos because I certainly didn't take them.
Yes, we
Yeah,
should thank Christine Acebo because most of the photos were hers and they're gorgeous.
but the layout's really pretty. It looks really nice. So I think the town should be proud of it. I hope we're proud of it.
And as Mike said, it is guidance. It is not orders. It is not ordinances. It is not rules and regulations. It is really guidance for the town over the next 10 years, trying to move forward, trying to take into account what people said. I think that's the other thing that I was greatly appreciative of was the interaction we had with the public, especially at our listening session. You listened, we talked, we actually listened to what you had to say, which was great also, to the point where the hopes and dreams of Ashford are hopefully captured, at least the movement we can do in the next 10 years, and the things that planning and zoning in its purview are able to do and support all those different areas and make sure that they are successful in meeting their objectives also. So at that point, I would like to open it up to public comment to hear what anyone who has a chance to review it or any input they wish to give. So we are open for public comment. I would ask that you keep your comments somewhere between 3 and 4 minutes, and uh, it's open to the public. Please raise your electric hand, wave at me, get my attention, or even speak up if it's kind of a silence there.
Hello.
First, Selectman Silversmith.
Well, you can hear me?
I can hear you.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate all of you on producing this. The Board of Selectmen endorses it. We were really pleased with the content, the thoroughness of the document, definitely the illustrations of everything. And it was a well put together plan, if you will, from planning and zoning perspective, and also provided some color for the town. So we very much appreciate the effort that was made, and we heartily endorsed it.
Thank you, Catherine. A hand for Carrie Mansberg.
Hi. I just wanted to say that I thought it was a beautifully written document. I learned more. I've lived in this town for 37 years. I learned more in the half hour it took to go through that than I've learned in 37 years. So thank you. I think it should be required reading for all town residents. I did have one question though, and that is, I didn't read the original or the one from 10 years ago. Were there substantive changes? And if so, could you summarize what they were?
I can take a shot at it and would greatly appreciate the help of any of the subcommittee members also and their feeling on that. I think the main thing that jumped out at us for changes this time around were Mike setting us straight and his group, Tyke, as to what the purpose of the plan of conservation and development was. It is not a vacation tourist guideline for coming to Ashford. It is, and many towns take it that way. You know, this is our town, this is how beautiful we are, this is what we do. It's really, its point was to have items, guidance that the town has provided to planning and zoning to be able to move forward with, again, those things that are in our purview. What we were able to do, we did maintain a number of the sections, even the sections that we did not have a a working environment with, or someone that we were not able to identify co-objectives, things that planning and zoning could work on to help them achieve objectives. Things like Board of Education. You will see they have objectives in there. However, there's always a section, and I think Energy Task Force has it, Ag Commission has it, the Natural Resources has it, where there's a section after the objectives for that specific group is the planning and zoning support. What objectives are we able to support in conjunction with that? And that was something that was a little different, or it was buried probably the last time. The last time we identified the various groups that would work on a potential objective and had this crazy little chart in the back with the initials and just all the different objectives that were supposed to be assigned to that group. Again, a little confusing. This way, it's all written out and it's there for anyone to look at. They look at that section, they'll see what the objectives are for that department and the objectives of planning and zoning to help support objectives of that department in order to help Ashford. That was the big change for me. And obviously we tried to update as many of the charts and tables and such as we could, because obviously the last ones, though it was supposed to be from 2015 to 2025, some of that data ended in 2015 or ended in 2016. They couldn't project it forward. So a lot of that has been updated in there to as close as we could get to the current status, the current time frame.
And I thank you for that. That's very helpful. And I just had one additional question. So I understand from your comments that this is a guide on, to kind of guide us through how we want Ashford to be, the rural nature and that sort of thing. Where do I guess the rules exist that enforce, this guidance? So in other words, I'll use the mega warehouse as an example, right? So if some other project came along that we thought was going to be a risk to the town's rural nature or to these guidelines, how does that get, how do we kind of protect those goals that are in this document?
You want me to take that, Jeff?
Sure, go ahead, Mike.
So the rules themselves are codified in the zoning regulations and subdivision regulations. So that talks about how Ashford is currently allowed to take big parts of the land and break them up into smaller pieces, and then the zoning regulations say how you can develop your property based upon what zone you're in and what uses are allowed in those zones. The POCD is not meant to affect current zoning regulations, but it is meant to affect changes or potential changes to policy. So, for example, if somebody decided that they wanted to add to the zoning regulations, we should allow trash to energy plants in our commercial zones. We might look at the POCD and say, well, we're not seeing there's support for that policy decision. And the statutes require the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider the POCD when they evaluate whether that would make sense or not. And so in that case, they might say, well, this is not really jiving with this foundational document that we have here. And they might decide that's not an appropriate change to approve, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. That makes sense.
Are you set, Carrie?
Yes,
Oh,
I am.
cool.
I'll lower my hand.
Okay, very good. I think Christine, hang on one second. As Zoom user, was that did you want to say something?
Oh, yes. It's Ruth Cutler. Did you catch? Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Yes, Ruth, thank you.
I had a couple of questions. First of all, it's an excellent job, big effort, and I thank you all for that. Couple of I was trying to pedal back through the maps. Um, on the maps, I did not see, for instance, Bill Parody's land is protected by Connecticut Farmland Trust under easement. The state or Connecticut Farmland Trust took those development rights. Knowlton property, the state bought the development rights. So in the sense, there are two owners on those properties. The state of Connecticut holds the development rights, which is a separate deed. On Bill Parody's property, the present owners hold the use of that land, and Connecticut Farmland Trust holds a deed for that easement on that property. That's really important. Crook's Orchard is another property. So in the sense, when you identify those properties either as open space or whatever they have two ownerships. One that protects the property, and two, the second owner has the right for the remaining uses. And I'm not sure that's clear on the maps. I'll have to go back through. But it's a terribly important aspect of conservation in Connecticut. There is a property that abuts the Nature Conservancy over the Mount Hope River that is owned, I think, by the Sebiga's brother. That is under a conservation easement by Joshua Trust. So there was one other thing. The issue of scenic roads, I'm not sure those are on maps. And I think that's another aspect of keeping Ashford rural. The third point, town roads have stone walls along them. And I noticed that you had the recommendation for an ordinance for protecting those stone walls. Frankly, those stone walls are owned both by the town and by the landowner. I'm finding a good portion of the stone walls on Lips Road along my property, which are surveyed, are being taken. And, that needs to have some enforcement behind it. I mean, I put up a camera, I can't catch the person, but it is being stripped off, and stone is terribly valuable right now. So that's part of the character of those scenic roads. I'll think of something else. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank
All
you,
done.
Ruth.
Super job.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you for the input. Also, just on top of what you were saying, I just wanted to say that one of the things we also did with this document was, and help me subcommittee, I can't remember, was it every 2-year review?
I think so, or was it one?
No, it wasn't one.
It
I
was
believe it
two
was,
then.
I
Then it
was
was
believe
two.
planning and zoning with it will do a review every 2 years.
Mhm.
And I mean, if someone were to submit information or, the request of having that type of a document, identifying scenic roads or the easements and the conservation areas and things like that, that is something we could possibly work on and add to it. Again, it's a living, breathing document is what we're trying to make this and not make it a one and done for the next 10 years.
But it's also it's an attribute that keeps property on the tax books because those properties are under 490. But it also needs protection when it goes through planning and zoning, that you're aware that there are two property owners who own that property. So you can't ignore the second owner because it happens to be Joshua Trust or the state of Connecticut. And that makes me really nervous because I'm in a process of donating an easement, and I want to make sure that that lasts in perpetuity and the trust doesn't get caught in some legal battle with either the town or a new subdivision. And it's up to you all to understand that those properties have two owners and they're two deeds.
Understand her point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Christina Sebo, yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a second comment to Carrie. One of the other things that Mark really fostered was adding a kind of village center and a kind of architectural vision for the town. And we actually dealt with that with the used car dealership, asking for some changes to that building to make it a little more villagey. So that kind of vision thing is something that is a little bit newer in this version.
Very good. Thank you.
I don't know how to raise my hand here. I agree with that, but it also has to be consistent in terms of signage. I mean, I cannot say that Dollar General is rural. The way it is presented itself, Willington made an effort to cut the signage and the lighting. That's something that we need to be much more careful of. Also, the ability of a town center to be developed. I think I mentioned in the car dealership thing that that corner of 74 and 44 has very little septic capacity because it drops off so fast behind those buildings. And above it is now privately owned. There needs to be a community leach field if you're going to develop that land into something that is substantial. Extramart bought the lot below it, tore the house down to have a larger capacity. So when you go about planning your village center, make sure it has the capacity to be developed as a center, both traffic-wise and as water and sewer, or water and whatever, traffic. So
Okay. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Christine. Anyone else for public comment? Well, it's either Nora or Joe, one or the other. Go right ahead.
It's Joe,
Joe
and
Hendricks. Thank you.
yeah, Joe Hendrick. And my question is the review. I did see the paragraph in question, and it says 2 years. Um, it, uh, Under what circumstance would we do it sooner than 2 years? 10 years is a long time. 10 years is a long time. Uh, the world's going to be a whole lot different in 10 years. It's going to be hotter. We're going to have more, probably climate change is going to change our uh, storms and etc. Um, I know that there's at least the energy task force has focused on resilience. I think that the statute from the state dictating that going into the POCD. I think that's we we got under that requirement. But it's going to be a question. So um, is this is this the only planning document Ashford will have going forward for 10 more years until 2036? That's maybe not a question for the PCC, but since we are talking about a guide for 10 years, I'm asking it.
I would say that, your first question was what would cause a quicker turnaround or a review? I would say if something was so obviously it depends on the group it needs to go to. I mean, some of the things that Ruth were bringing up when it comes to some of the deeds and things like that, a deed review, it needs to have communication between the different departments because, again, deeds are kept with the town clerk's office, deeds are kept with the
Mhm.
assessor. So, things like that, it might be where it needs to go to. When it comes specifically to I'm just dealing with a specific right there. If it's something that is, of a nature with uh, I'm just trying to think of what type of an example that would bring something uh, to a head when it comes to planning and zoning. Obviously, it's the use. If someone is
Mhm.
using a property that is not in agreement with the plan of conservation and development, we would appreciate that being brought to our attention because we're just live in this town also, and possibly put it on an agenda and be able to discuss it, or then to direct it to where it needs to go. If it's not in our purview, obviously we're going to work within the confines of the town government to find out who might be able to make influence on that. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Mr. Mr. Chair, could I just add something?
Absolutely, Janet, please
Um,
do.
so Joe, I think we also made a lot of the goals or most of the goals broad, so they're not specific, so they can include a wide range of problems or issues. So I think if you look at some of them and think about what might be happening in the future, you can see that they could be applicable. Um, and we did that purposefully.
So I might be wrong about this, but I believe that the 2-year review was anticipated in the 2015 Plan of Conservation and Development. And I I guess I first owned property in Ashford in 2015, but I'm new here. 2018 is before we here permanently. Um, and I'm not aware of any review being done. So I'll just urge the commission to pay attention to that because I think it's a great document. I really appreciate that numerous times you referred to it as a living document, and I'd like to keep it that way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any other input?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ruth.
When I was on the Conservation Inland Wetlands Commission, planning and zoning gave, in lieu of open space requirements, easements on various properties. I have never found any records of a list of those easements or where those easements are. I know when I was briefly on the Conservation Commission, we attempted to find out where those easements are and what they meant, and whether or not they had ever been monitored or there was any baseline documentation. These are easements held by the town for things like drainage, etc. And that's something that, could come back to haunt you if somebody buys a property that the town of Ashford has a drainage easement on and you're not aware, or it has some other type of easement. Is you own that easement. So The other thing is when people survey land, you should require them to put down on an A2 survey where water drains to off of roads, because the town of Ashford has the ability to just drain water off town roads onto various pieces of property, whether it's legal or not. But for your own sake, you should have a legal idea of where that drainage is and exists.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your input.
Okay.
Anyone else from the public?
I have another comment. When I went back through the maps, and I know from mapping, it's difficult. The farmland soils are kind of vague where they're put. I know on my property, they're in some bedrock, which is not exactly farmland soil. So that might be looked at on a later date, but it's something that if you're going to use it as a planning tool, it needs to be further investigated. Same way with things like wetlands.
Okay. Okay. At this point, I'm going to, seeing no other input, I'm going to close the public comment and ask the commissioners through their review if they have any comments or input regarding the planner conservation and development.
It's Janet. I have a couple things.
Yes.
One is on page 18 at the bottom, it's mentioned that the Conservation Commission developed the Langhammer Trail, and the Tremco Trail was left off of that. We had discussed it. The Tremco Trail, which is off of the upper parking lot by the senior housing.
Did you say page 18?
I did. Well, that's how it came up on my computer.
Oh, okay. What's it under?
It's under the, let me find it. Hold on. Shoot. I thought they'd be all the same. 2018. So it's municipal facilities, has a map of town lands and facilities. And then the by the map, there's this paragraph that begins with recreation in Ashford is focused around two municipal parks. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the bottom of that paragraph.
And I'm sorry, your comment was what property was left off?
Tremco Trail. We did the Conservation Commission maintains the trail at the Langhammer property, and then we maintain the Tremco Trail, which is by the senior housing, by the upper parking lot at senior housing.
So, pardon me for interrupting, Janet. The version that's in the materials for the meeting, for the hearing,
Mm-hmm.
page 12 has uh, land use and land cover, and it has the town owns 4 open space.
Yeah, I
Yes,
did see that. I did see that, but I thought if we're mentioning Langhammer, we should mention
it
Tremco.
keeps going. The Ashford Memorial Park, the Langhammer property, Pompey Hollow Park, and the Tremco Trail.
Right, right.
That's so yeah. So the version
Well, it is mentioned there. I just thought if we're mentioning Langhammer, we should mention that the Conservation Commission is taking care, is doing the Tremco Trail as well.
right.
If you're mentioning it, I don't know. Anyway. Um,
Okay.
and then I had two comments on photographs. Um, one is on the front page, um, the the Mixer Tavern photograph. I mean, that's an important building, but I don't think a lot of people necessarily know what it is. And we have this beautiful town office building that was quite an accomplishment for the town to build. And I think that would be better placed on the front page myself. I don't know how other people feel.
And I believe Mike has a photo of that from me, of the town hall, the town office buildings as well, so it could be subbed in.
And then there's one other thing I have under historic resources and buildings. It mentions that the Ashford Academy is the highest priority. The picture shows a barn, which is a nice picture, but people might not know where the Ashford Academy is, and I thought it would be good to actually have a picture of that there.
Mike also has a photo of that in the stash.
We can swap those out.
Academy.
But it's quite beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I'm in the wrong place, but can I just ask what the green square is on the top page? On the cover?
On the front page?
Yeah. Mike?
It was formatted to be initially the place for a town seal, but it just didn't look right with the way that Ashford seal is, so I moved it and it just left it in there. I can delete it if you don't like it. It's not performing any function.
Right, it's a green square, right? Okay.
We probably don't need it.
Nord.
Yeah, I have a question about the plan of conservation and development. Earlier in the introduction, you said that it was mandated to be produced every 10 years. And I would like to know who mandates it. Is that a federal or is that a state mandate?
That's a state.
Okay, thank you.
Mark.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, just trying to go back to our meetings. I thought we had originally discussed that at the end of the document, we would have, 1 or 2 pages, whatever it took, to have the planning and zoning policy sections from each area, at the end, not only in the document, but at the end. So for planning and zoning commissioners, we could just, instead of going through the entire document, just go to the end and see what those support areas were for each of the individual sections. Just for
I
ease
don't know if
of,
I don't know if we had a consensus, but I do remember you mentioning that.
yeah, and I honestly, I don't remember either, but yeah, so, but
Mike, do you think that's something we could pull or?
Yeah, I think that would be something we can just add. We're not changing any content. We're just stating it a second time. So I think
Right.
we can do that as an addendum.
It's just a helpful redundancy. So that's good.
well, yeah, I mean, I have doubts that everyone's going to go through this document page by page to find that section.
You're
As
not flipping through the 56, 60 pages?
Two
not for
people
another,
are.
not for another 10 years.
Two people are, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Doug.
Hi, Jeff. This document came out great. The subcommittee should be proud of themselves. Thank you very much for everything you guys did. I have one comment, and I'd also like Nord's view on this too. There's a couple instances in the document where we're referencing the Boy Scouts of America organization. I believe in recent years they changed their organization name to Scouting America. It might be worth changing that.
That is accurate.
But otherwise, the document came together very well. So really appreciate the work you guys did.
I know I recognize what you're saying, and actually I was just taking a look at the May issue of the Ashford Citizen, and that's not even indicated by Boy Scout, though it does say Cub Scout in there, and the pack and many of the terms that were used in the past, but nothing that identifies it as Scouting America, just the Scout Troop itself, Scout Troop 92. So we can make those changes. Those are easy enough to add in, bring us up to speed, bring us up to the 21st century. So that's fine.
Yeah, Jeff, it's called the Scout Troop. It's not called the Boy Scout Troop.
Right.
Yeah, those are all underneath the larger umbrella of Scouting America job.
Yep.
This was made, I think, a couple of years ago. But just a formality.
Would the same hold for the reference to Girl Scouts?
That's good.
Yes, it actually does slightly different, but it's mostly because the original Boy Scouts was folded under a legal lawsuit.
Yes. Yes. So a reference to the Girl Scouts, do we happen to know the term, or just need to find that out?
It looks like that's still the same,
Okay.
but I encourage you to look into it as well.
Okay. Very good.
I just checked. It looks like Girl Scouts remains the same, but Boy Scouts is what got folded into the overarching Scouts label.
Oh, so Girl Scouts does maintain its title,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
The
Thank
Boy
you.
Scouts looks like it only changed due to legality.
Okay. All right. Stephanie. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, I just to echo what Doug said, it's a beautiful document. It's well crafted. It's organized well. It's easy to read. The pictures are great. So kudos to everyone who worked really hard on this document. I do have one comment on page 28. You talk about the Board of Eds, the Region 19 made up of 12 members, and then you also at the bottom it says the Ashford Board of Ed made up of 12 elected citizens. I believe that board is only 7.
Oh, I think you're right.
Actually, I believe it's
I counted, I wrote names, but I might be wrong. I think it's 7. You can go back and look.
having been on it for many, many years. Selectwoman Silversmith, are you still with us?
I don't know.
If not, okay, no problem. I know she's in her office.
Yes, I am. I'm looking it up desperately while you're
Oh,
talking.
I figured 18 years you knew it off the top of your head. I'm sorry.
I thought there were 6 members, but
That's what I was
here at
thinking.
7, and
I think it's
I wasn't on that board. I can't remember. I
1,
gotta
2, 3,
check.
4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Either way, I don't think it's 12. So just if
Yeah.
you want to.
Okay. So we'll make that correction. Thank you,
Yeah.
Stephanie.
Yeah. No problem.
Anything else? Okay. So I also want to capture some of the comments from the Selectman's office, who, as they wrote in their meeting on Friday, and captured in the minutes. Selectmen commented on the quality and thoroughness of the proposed POCD. Tess Grouse moved to endorse the 4/1/2026 draft plan of conservation and development with the following suggested edits. One of those under the plan elements of governance, page 9. What was missed was the senior center director and agent for the elderly as a full-time member. And to that end, the recreation director who's on the list is a part-time member, not full-time. So what I'm recommending is that we remove the term full-time and add in the senior center director, agent for the elderly, to that. Another change captured here, and it has been sent on to Mike's attention also, is under page 14, municipal functions, objective 1D, simply replacing continued publication of the Ashford Citizen, which is delivered to every Ashford household via the United States Postal Service, with continued publication of the Ashford Citizen, which is delivered to every household and local business via the United States Postal Service and is posted on the town's website. It makes it clearer, gives people the ability to find this document in multiple places. And it does go not just to households, but to the town businesses. There's also a longer write-up, and again, this has been submitted to Mike for the under economic development, somewhere in and around, depending on what the printer does. Number 24, page 24, is the Cattle Rock property write-up. And just some more specifics, because again, we started writing this, we weren't on that section 18 months ago, but it was somewhere in the range of probably a year to 10 months ago when we were on that. Yes, Catherine.
The change was actually to make sure that people understand that the Cattle Rock, or what's called the Wagon Shed properties, that there are 10 lots in Ashford and there are 2 in Willington. And when we have gotten grants, we have gotten them jointly. We work together. And so whatever plan comes up is developed for that area, Willington's a factor as well. We have both Willington and Ashford residents on the steering committee for the last grant that we received. And just indicates when we receive that grant and what we're going to be doing with it. So thank you.
It also brings up to current the fact that I think in the
Yes.
write-up it says it's a proposed grant or what has been proposed, and
Right.
it's an actuality as of April of this year. So
Yes.
it brings us well up to speed in making that change. So the only other change in here had to do with, again, depending on what your printer does, under the municipality, under the governance, I'm sorry, I'm looking at, in my book, it's looking at page 14 or, let me get there. Here we go. Yes. Page 14. Where did it go? Oh, yes, at the top, other groups, just past the town website banner showing the website location. Other groups, civically involved, non-governmental groups in Ashford include, but are not limited to. We put in that statement hopefully to cover a number of groups that have some type of civic-minded. However, the request of the suggested edit from the Selectman's office is adding the Hungarian Social Club, as well as adding places of worship. And in doing that, we are capturing basically food pantry and areas of clothing and other household items available to those less fortunate. So that's a change for us to consider with the board itself. But that captures the suggested edits from the Selectman's office. Any other input? Mike, talk to me about procedure where we are. Are we, um, do we simply close the hearing at this point? Motion for close the hearing? Um,
So if everybody is comfortable with the document as presented and is in agreement with the handful of edits that were discussed, you can close and act with an effect, set the effective date, and maybe then it would include a condition that perhaps the subcommittee gets one last round to make sure that all the edits are incorporated correctly. If that is not, if you don't want to do it that way, you could leave the hearing open. We could make the edits, and the commission could, if they wanted to, could review the updated document at a continued public hearing in July. Um, but you don't have to keep it open if everybody is comfortable with these edits and that they're not substantive.
well, to that end, I'd like to take a individual vote on this as to how the commission feels about the document, which got, again, I thank the public for their input. I thank the public for their kind words about the work that went on by the subcommittee. But again, I would just like to capture if everyone is comfortable with the document to be accepted and move forward with the edits as provided, which will be reviewed by the subcommittee for capturing those edits. So I'll start with who I see in the corner here. Nord, how do you feel on that? How do you vote on that?
I think the document is acceptable as stated with the edits.
Okay. Stephanie,
I agree.
Michael, there you go.
All right. I think it looks great. I mean, with the suggested edits, it's I've been reading it this whole time. It looks really good.
Okay. Thank you. Doug,
I am good with the inclusion of the edits.
okay. Mark,
Well, I guess that means I'm meeting one more time, huh? No, I'm fine with all the yeah,
what's one more meeting?
that's right.
Janet.
I'm good with the edits, thanks.
Okay. And I think that has oops, Jerry.
I think we're okay.
Okay. And I guess I'll vote on this one. I'll make it unanimous. Okay, 8-0. All right, so we'll move forward with this. Have
I
the
also
subcommittee
think it was
look at it
great.
one more time. Oh, Steve, I'm sorry, Steve. I missed you.
That's all right. I've been
Yeah,
quiet.
we're 9-0. We're full up here. I'm sorry. And I led Caspian wrong too. I can't count. Steve, how do you feel?
I agree, especially if there's some sort of wrap up at the end, because it just kind of stop without something wrapping together. And I heard that suggestion a few minutes ago. So
Yeah, that's part of where the information for the appendix will be in there, along with Mark's suggestion of pulling out the specific objectives for planning and zoning. So I think that'll have a nice end to it at that point. All right, so we will move forward with this.
So Jeff, if we're not
Need an
going
effective
to
date?
yes, if the commission isn't going to, if the full commission doesn't need to see it again, then yeah, we'll just want to set an effective date. And my thinking now, just if we want to give the commission and everybody time to look at it, and we're going to make all these final edits, I think what you could consider is you could set it for, well, you're thinking, unless you think it's too long, like the 14th of July. That would give an opportunity to include this in the meeting materials for the July meeting so that we could actually distribute the final document to the commission. And then that gives a month to wrap everything up.
So our effective date ideally would be that the 14th. Is that our next meeting date after?
Well, our meeting date would be the 13th, so that it would become
Okay.
effective the next day.
Okay, just in case something shakes out. Yeah, okay. So for an effective date of July 14th. Also gives NECOG some extra time to get back to us, right?
No comment on that, but I actually did work with a town that insisted on picking effective dates for regulations and plans that were some date that someone would remember. So they'd pick the nearest holiday, they'd pick Valentine's Day. They thought somehow that would be more useful. I'm not saying we have to do that here, but it'll take some time to do the appendices, the summary table at the end, like that'll take a little bit of time. And so I just want to make sure that we can get that done and get it out to the subcommittee.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's fine. Plus, yeah, give us that opportunity to review it and give feedback. Okay, very good. So to that end, I think we probably effectively, but I'll do it anyways. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing on the 2026, 2036
So moved.
Plan of Conservation Development? Jerry motions. A second?
Janet seconds.
Janet seconds. All those in favor of closing the hearing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. And again, thank you to the public, all those people who attended, listened in, gave their input. We really do appreciate it. It's how we put the whole thing together was by getting your input and then just kind of massaging it into a document. So again, thank you very much. Okay, public hearing closed. Moving on. PZ20 new commission business, a PZ 26-4 modifications of special permit per 317C for the construction of an 8,000 square foot multi-purpose building. Owner, our companions, contact Kay Grindle. This is for the receipt of the application. There's no discussion at this point. The material for that is provided with this meeting for your review for the next meeting. Mike, we've received all fees, and I do see that they filled out the application checklist also.
Yep, and because of the proximity, we have to notify Eastford. So we'll do that and get the legal notices scheduled. I do have some full-size copies of the plans in the office, so if anybody wants full size, I mean, obviously, if you want the 11 by 17s, just let us know and we can package everything up for you.
Okay, very good. So please reach out to the land use office if you require the full-size plans for review. I know my eyes will probably be going to get a piece of it because it is as small as it is otherwise on the computer. Okay, all those I'm looking for a motion, basically, before I take a vote. I'm looking for a motion as to acceptance of the application for PZ 26-4 modification of the special permit for the Our Companions. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Jerry moved. Is there a second?
I can
Janet,
second it.
Michael Pepin. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
aye.
I-
All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Thank you. All right, continuing on with the Mike D'Amato show. Consideration of possible zoning amendments as required by SSA 25-1. These are the housing requirements that have been laid out by the state with a number of different requirements. One of those especially being in the long run, deciding if you're going to go out on your own and provide your own updates to these requirements, or if you're going to work with your local Council of Congress, NECOG in our case. That's one item here. But Mike, it's your show.
So actually tonight, all we have to worry about is the summary review amendments. We have a fair amount of time before we're going to get any type of substantial feedback or guidance on the housing growth plans. So as of July 1, the Special Session Act 25-1 says that all towns in Connecticut have to allow basically residential developments that include at least two, but not more than 9 units whether they be in one or more buildings and fully residential, or whether they be in one or more buildings and have some commercial or mixed use component. We have to allow them by summary review, which means it is essentially a non-discretionary review performed by the commission in this case. You cannot have a public hearing. You cannot apply arbitrary or discretionary standards. It has to be essentially as of right. And so, particularly in more rural communities that rely on the special permit process for reviews of applications, where you might then say, we think we need more buffering here. We don't like the way this lighting looks. We think the building design needs to be adjusted. We don't like how this curb cut is situated. The public hearing special permit process affords the commission the flexibility to really have those conversations. The summary review process does not. And so essentially, you have to hold them, or can only hold an applicant to the standards as outlined in the regulations for everything. So what we have been doing, I mean, at this point, we've done a fair amount of these across Connecticut, is kind of coming up with a sort of quasi form-based template that outlines the specific standards and requirements that we would hold a developer or an applicant to, in a way that is written so that everybody who reads the regulation understands exactly what the standards are. And we don't use sort of subjective terms like appropriate and adequate and sufficient. So I had originally thought about sort of putting together something at a higher level, and not kind of getting into the weeds on some of the details, but I think what might be a little bit more useful is giving you an example of how the regulation would actually be laid out and kind of the meat of the sort of the content, and then from there I can obviously answer any questions, but then we can fold that into I can make amendments that'll work for the town, if that makes sense and it feels like we're on the right track. So I'm going to just share my screen, and then we can go from there.
I'm sorry, Mike, did you ask me a question?
I don't believe so.
Pardon me?
I don't believe I did, unless I
okay.
implied one. Sorry.
I just had to step out for a second. I was
Oh,
choking.
no. I'm going to just pull this up and so hopefully you're seeing my screen.
Yes.
So there's two types. So the high level intent of what the regulation is meant to cover here, and then the applicability. We have to allow this in any zone that is on any property that is, quote, zoned for commercial or mixed use. So here what we'd be talking about is the general commercial zone. The general consensus in the sort of planning community is that this doesn't apply to industrial zones, so we would leave that out, the IID, and we would not include the residential zones. But this table here in applicability would include those applicable zones, and then we would get into the standards or the definitions of the types of development that the statute or the act says we have to allow. So in this case, there are two terms that are defined in the bill. The first is transit community middle housing development. The second is mixed use development. In their esteemed wisdom, the legislature decided to call it transit community middle housing development, and it has absolutely nothing to do with transit. And so that makes it wildly confusing for sort of the layperson reading it. So what we have done in almost every single instance where we have written these regs is we have folded both of those terms into a single category of use called middle housing, because that is essentially what it is. So rather than getting people confused that it has to be around transit or that we have to build transit or anything along those lines, we're going to create our own term that is a sort of a more broad umbrella. And that's where the term middle housing comes in. The next section is where we get into how the review unfolds, and that is where we would point to any existing standard or criteria for other application requirements that already exist. So, we have the standard already that we've talked about. We use this for the application checklist for site plans. So we would say you have to submit a site plan that is described in this section of the regs. Erosion and sedimentation control is provided for in this section. And then, we would get into additional application requirements, which we don't have in our current regulations. And that's where we've got the building elevations, which we'll get into later on, a floor plan to explain how we're going to use the space, and then the stormwater quality manual, deep adopted 2024 version. So we would reference that. So again, anytime we have a standard in the regs, we will point to it. And then in an instance where we don't have a standard, we will prescribe specifically what that is. 2 and 3 talk about what the summary review process includes and what it does not, and when you can deny as the commission. Those come more or less verbatim out of the act, but we're restating them here. And then what we've generally gotten into like I said, most of these regs that we've written are the building materials and design. And so what we're trying to do here is be very prescriptive so that everybody understands what the development will look like and the design standards that are associated with it. So rather than saying, again, shall be appropriate for, the rural and agricultural characteristics of the community, because again, nobody knows what that is. We're using very defined terms. So we're stating, high quality, durable, natural materials, which include, and then we're listing what those are, and then including specific graphics to further explain what those criteria sort of intend to establish. We're going so far as to say that 80% of the facade should be constructed using those materials. We talk about roof materials and the types of applications that we should have there. And then we talk further about building elements and requiring things like modulation, expression lines, projections, material changes, roofline variations, windows, chimneys, cupolas, shutters, pilasters. And so the intent is not to say that every building has to include all of these things, but what we're trying to do is explain what we expect to be incorporated into the design. We talked in the last, with the POCD about the town office building. The town office building has a lot of these design elements. So if you looked at the town office building, a lot of the things that we're including here are in there. And then we're using this graphic to show how those characteristics play out on a building so that people, again, understand what we're getting at. We are including permitted roof types really to get away from flat roofs because we want to avoid those. I think particularly we're talking about a residential scale development. So we're showing what those are and really just again to get away from what is not permitted. We're then giving some examples about unit configuration, which again codifying in there that we have independent living facilities, including provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, sanitation, and personal storage. In some of these, during the public hearing, we've included specifics related to some towns want us to specify in-unit laundry, for example. We could add language in there for something like that. And then provisions for operable windows. Any questions so far? Should I keep going? Is this making any sense? Feel free to jump in.
Mike, this is Janet. Does this apply to retrofits, or just new construction?
So the act would apply to anything. So somebody could, in theory, show up tomorrow and say, I want to convert Dollar General into 9 residential units, and we would have to still treat that as a summary review. This regulation largely contemplates new construction only because so much of the existing stuff would be pre-existing non-conforming, and we don't have a lot of control over that. But to the extent that they wanted to change something, we want to have the standards there so that if they do amend it, we have a way to address it. Does that make sense?
So,
It
no,
started to, but then it took a turn. Could you just
yeah,
go over that last part again?
So we want to have these standards would apply to the use. So an existing building um, would have some pre-existing non-conforming protections. So, for example, if somebody wanted to convert 221, the car repair facility, we wouldn't tell them you have to put a new roof on and you have to relocate your parking or move the building closer to the street, right? So those are non-conforming characteristics of the site that we can't make them modify. However, if as part of this application they propose certain changes to components of that building, then those specific standards within this section of the regs would apply.
So we can't make them do a roof, but if they choose to change the roof, they have to follow the guidelines.
Correct. Exactly.
great. Thank you.
So we then get into site layout and
Hold
parking.
on 1 second. Nord has a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, I have a question, Mike. Some of these multi-family units would, it seems to me they would have to be in a area that's zoned residential and not zoned residential agricultural. They'd have to be in residential zones. We don't have a lot of residential zones in Ashford. Where would you put these buildings that they're forcing us to build?
So the only thing that they're forcing is for you to allow these in on any lot zoned for commercial or mixed use. So you still have full control and the current zoning regulations would still apply for the RA zone, which is 90 something percent of the town. So this would only apply to the small portions of town that are the commercial zones.
Okay, thank you.
And if for example, in the long run, we do end up over the years making Cattle Rock a mixed use area, these types of units could be built there.
I see.
Is that correct? Is that correct, Mike?
It is correct. However, it would be a maximum of 9 units per parcel.
Right, right.
So there would have to be some substantial subdivisions happening there to get any type of significant development. But yes, if somebody wanted to put 9 units on Kettle Rock, this regulation would apply.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
The next piece is site layout and design. So again, with a lot of these things, what we've tried to do is tried to include a graphic that is explains some of the criteria because this is summary review and this is a little bit different because there's no hearing and there's no real, back and forth to try to articulate some of these requirements. So the other thing that was part of this bill is some language which says that commissions for developments of this size, the commissions cannot mandate a number of parking spaces. So if it's less than 16 units in the parking on the parking side, it's 16. If it's under 16 units, you can't tell them how much parking to provide, and you can't deny it if you don't think they've provided enough. So the language here says that it should be provided at a ratio of 1 space per unit, but not shall. This is not a big deal for Ashford because if you have an 8 unit development, they are going to provide probably more than 8 parking spaces. You cannot a landlord is not going to expect to even get close to market rate if it's not providing parking for its residents because we don't have any transit that someone could rely upon. So I don't see this as a big deal here, but the bill does go so far as to say that. We're trying to for new construction, we would be not allowing parking in the front yard. With developments, what you really want is to have those buildings closer to the street. You want to have landscaping there. You want to have cars behind the buildings. That's sort of the way and that you kind of things are going. That really helps with creating a sense of place. Older buildings, if you look at some of the older buildings in town, they're not built really far off the road, and that's how you can tend to slow traffic down. And that's where then if you start looking at things like sidewalks, all of those things start to make more sense if you have parking of vehicles behind the building. So that's what we're shooting for here. Um, Building orientation. So some of the conversations that we've had in some communities are applying what's called a contextual setback. What that does is have a new building split the difference between the buildings on the left and right and sort of creating an even playing field so that you don't have two buildings that are older that are pulled really close to the road, and then we set a new arbitrary setback of 50 or 75 feet, and then you get a 20-foot setback and then a 50-foot setback and then a 20-foot setback. It's not consistent in that way. This is what we did for the Lake District to make sure that new houses would match the street line to their neighbors. So there's some language in there that we can talk further about if that's something the commission is interested in. And then if there's multiple buildings, taller buildings should be at the back of the property. Next section we have is very prescriptive landscape design standards. It talks again about how many shrubs and how many trees and how frequently and whether they should be evergreens, flowering shrubs, etc. This is really again meant to make it very clear what they should be providing, and not getting into things that are going to be applied differently depending on who reads it. We are requiring all unpaved surfaces to be landscaped in some way, and then to have a landscape buffer when there's an adjacent commercial use. And then we provide some graphic representation there to show, again, the intent of what those buffers should look like if you're standing on a neighboring property, kind of how those would all come together. All of these standards are things that the commission, we can adjust. If they don't think that there's enough of this or there's too much of that, or we don't want, this, street trees at a ratio of 30 per 30 feet, of 1 per 30 feet, those metrics we can adjust, but this is sort of the content that we would want to include in the initial draft. And then I realized that the graphic got pushed up on top of the other page there, but we've got some language about lighting, which mirrors the dark sky compliance standards that we talk often about, and that they be full cutoff fixtures with a less than 90-degree angle. So I'll go back to it. Here's the top of the page. Here's what the graphic would look like so that the light shines down. We have no light trespass at the property line. That is the standard of the International Dark Sky. We just don't require the seal because all that does is make the applicant pay them for the label that goes on the plans. But this is, let me see if I can zoom this in a little bit. This is essentially the standard there, so that it's a full cutoff, less than 90 degrees, no light spillage at the property line, which is largely the standard we hold applicants to, but we're being prescriptive in showing and stating that. We are requiring some green space on the property. In the standard we've started with is 500 square feet of green space per unit. So this is a place where people can go outside and sit. We're requiring it to be shaded or otherwise protected, an area of play space for children or pets. Again, this is a place where people are going to live. And even though that we have ample access to green space in Ashford, I think it's important that if somebody wants to, if they're in an apartment and they want to have access to some outside amenity, they should have someplace outside of the building where they can go and sit and spend time. Nothing very expensive from the development side, but something that we've included on a lot of those. Refuse, this is largely very similar to what our current regulations have. The next thing that we've included are design examples to then speak to specifically what the bill says we have to allow. So it says we have to allow duplex, triplex, multiplex, cottage clusters, and then as we talked about, commercial to residential conversions. So this top line shows the duplex, triplex. So we have a symmetrical sort of side-by-side duplex here on the left. Then in the middle is known as a stacked duplex, where the second unit is upstairs. We have multiplex units here on the second row. The building on the right is a perfect six, which are very popular in Hartford and in more urban settings, but is specifically referenced in the bill as having to be allowed. The third row are cottage units. These are examples from a project just over the line in Massachusetts. Again, cottage clusters we are required to allow. Those are typically single family, very small, detached dwelling units, sort of all situated around a common green area. They're, usually 1,000, 1,200 square feet. Um, and some people call them pocket neighborhoods or tiny house neighborhoods or things along those lines. Those are also required to be allowed. And then this is an example here of sort of an office building conversion where we have some very sort of traditional office development that they then do some, incorporate some plantings in the front, an architectural element in that front entrance. They do some architectural detail on the front there for the adding some roof line adjustments and a cupola, but not adjusting the whole roof. And so this is an expectation of how we might ask the commercial property owner that has an existing building to make some of those adjustments without having to strip the whole building down and build it again. The next thing that we will have to do is create specific design dimensional standards. So we would mirror, in this case, the standards that we have, and then incorporate new standards. This would be something that we would talk about at a subsequent meeting. I'm not asking you to make those changes now. So for example, if we wanted to regulate building coverage versus impervious coverage differently, if we wanted to look at maximum building width, if there's certain things that we wanted to incorporate here, we would do that in the table and then pull over any existing standard for things like setbacks. Obviously, we have parking, vehicular access for driveways, height, those things we would all incorporate, that existing language. And then alternative compliance, I'm not going to get into now. That's a little bit down the road. But this is sort of a summarization and kind of pulls together different elements that we've written for different towns, Mansfield, Willington, Tallinn, Vernon, kind of Bolton in this area, and a very similar approach to what we've done with them. So with that, I will stop babbling.
Not babbling at all. So just to reiterate for my own edification, what we just saw was a template that the headers and such are what you folks have developed to meet these requirements. And it's kind of a plug and play for us to go through that and not only apply the current standards that we have, but potentially update our standards to meet some of those requirements.
Yeah, so when the bill was passed in November, internally in our office, we started coming up with a template, knowing there was going to be very little time. And so this is sort of an adjusted template that pulls out the stuff that I don't think is necessarily pertinent here. And so, yes, what I would be looking for from you guys tonight would be if it makes sense and you want to stick to this sort of form-based, very prescriptive approach, I would take what I showed you, and I would start inserting all of the standards that we already have, and then leave out the blanks that we don't have. And we would then start working at a subsequent meeting to
develop those,
fill in the gaps.
Mhm.
But the idea is because we don't know how this is going to hit the ground, and it could be like accessory dwelling units where the state says we have to allow it and everybody freaks out and we try to figure out do we need to opt out or what, and then very few people actually build them. But it also could be a situation where someone shows up and we just don't know how these will hit the ground. So we're trying to be very prescriptive in the first drafts because we know we can always make the regulations less restrictive down the road once we've seen how this goes. But we don't want to be in a situation where we feel like a development gets by us and we didn't have a standard that we wished we'd developed. So we're sort of setting the bar real high, and then over time we can bring it down.
Any questions from the commissioners?
I think it's a great idea. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I'm all for starting to apply this because it is a mandate from the state, correct? To follow this and do this summary review. Taking away the special permit. I mean, if that's the case, it gives us some sense of control, obviously. And like you said, it better defines words like rural character, as supposed to, anything along those lines that are very non-specific.
Okay,
Any
so
other feedback from the commission? Ers? Oh, we got 2 votes to go ahead. Anybody else? Mark, what do you think? Leads us to a better definition of that village district and controlled construction?
I think so.
Oh, well, smart. Is everybody locked and I'm the only one moving?
No, Mark popped in and out. He might not have audio connected yet. He just came back in.
Oh, okay. Nor just so still. I thought maybe he locked up on me here.
Well, you can ask everyone to wave to you.
Well. Is there a consensus? Does anyone feel that they don't want this to move forward, that they don't want Mike to make these efforts to insert our standards and then figure out where we need to adjust or what we need to develop?
Like you said, this is a good way of maintaining some control over a mandate. I think.
Doug, any feedback?
I'm okay with considering this.
Okay.
I'm
Steven,
okay.
I don't want to leave you out. Steven?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. And Jerry, you were going to say something?
No, I said it's okay with me also.
Okay. And Stephanie, in order to capture everybody,
Yeah.
what's your feeling?
No, I agree. I'm for this.
Okay. Mike, you've got the go ahead on our part. Please do. Thank you.
Will do.
All right. The last item on business for the agenda. Draft zoning map. Now, this has been a thorn in our side for a number of years, from the original zoning map that was, forgot what they called it, spot zoning for our commercial areas. And then we started to spread that out a little bit without really having an official draft of a zoning map. We've kind of combined those together into the draft that we have now that identifies the general commercial, the IID zone, the residential agricultural, technology development zone, and the Lake District out here. So, Mike, you want to add to that?
Yeah. So, when the regulations were revised substantially in 2014, there was a document which was inserted into the zoning regs that was called Ashford Zoning Map Draft. It was not included as part of the official, and I'm gonna share these things as I go so that you can see. So hopefully you can see this. Can you see that?
Yes.
Hopefully it might be a little bit small. So this is the document, the map that was included with the zoning regs in 2014. It was referred to as a draft. And it shows the general commercial zone at 74 and 44, which is down here in that sort of light red. It shows the technology zone here on the left-hand side and sort of that light blue, I guess. And then the IID up at the top in purple. Everything else is in yellow, and that's the RA zone. So we have that document that was in the zoning regs and has been treated as the zoning map and referenced everywhere that I have seen prior to me coming on board and in going forward after that. In looking at this with the previous assessor, there's a lot of discrepancies in the assessor's records as far as properties that they have listed as being zoned commercial, which are not on this map as being commercial. And I started going through it, and what we determined was, and as many of you have probably seen, there is another zoning map, which I will share now, which is this document. Hopefully you are seeing that. And so that is a little bit different in that it shows two different R zones, which no longer exist, and that's easier to understand as a new person like me because we don't have any reference to a recreational zone in the regulations. But as you'll see, particularly as we get further down, all these black squares here, these are all commercial zone parcels, and even up at the top, we've got some properties here, and then the IID, or what is now the IID at the top here. So at some point, this document, as I understand it from some of the notes that I have, I was morphed into the draft map that you saw that I just showed, but the new map includes parcels that are not on this map that are now referenced as commercial, and it deletes parcels that are on the map that you're looking at as that are zoned commercial and contain commercial properties as being zoned for that. And so we've got a whole bunch of issues with sort of inconsistent advice being given over the last 15 years or so or whatever, as far as what the properties are zoned for. But we've got a whole host of properties, basically from the town hall or town office building east, that are, by the current map, not zoned for commercial and would be non-conforming, which I don't know would have been the commission's intent, given that there are more than one or two properties. So what we've done is put together a combined map, which now I will show you as number 3, which incorporates the old and the new.
Oh, okay.
So that shows the new zones, technology zone, the IID. It incorporates the Lake District zones, which we adopted a couple of years ago, which are shown in green. And then it includes the extent of the commercial zone as shown on the map that's been in the zoning regs for the last 12 years. But then it picks up the parcels along 44 that had been for decades on the prior map zoned commercial. And then, like I said, there's no, they never got not brought over. So the reason why I sort of started with this map the way that it's shown here is that the draft zoning map going to this new version, the new color version, was never formally adopted as far as I can tell. So we need to codify a map. Otherwise, the black and white is what we're going off of. And that is a challenge because it references zones that don't exist in the regs, and the regs reference zones that don't exist on the map. I also don't think that the commission's intent, but maybe I'm wrong, was to eliminate and make non-conforming every commercial property from the town hall to essentially Eastford. I don't think that would be something that the commission would do sort of wholesale. And so it led me to believe that this was not the final map and that somehow things didn't get finalized correctly. So my thinking was if we put all of it together on a single map, and this has to be done through the public hearing process, we would then, we could certainly go through this over as long as you'd like, but the sooner we have an understanding of what the heck these properties are all zoned, the better from a staff perspective. Then if the commission during the public hearing wants to eliminate certain parcels that were added from sort of the black and white, we can always delete them and revert back to the RA zone. But right now, I feel like this is the most concise and cleanest way to bring all of the old and the new together without creating a situation where sort of because of this confusion over the last dozen years, a commercial property owner, maybe he called the town hall in 2015 and was told he was commercial, but if he calls the town hall today, he's going to be told he's residential. And I feel like that is an unintended consequence. And so I'm feeling like we should sort of set this back to where it was and include everything.
For those of you who have not experienced it, the original map, the black and white one that Mike has shared with us, you see a bunch of designations, C-22, C-8, C-20. And there was like 2 or 3, 4 pages of legend that went with that map. And it was very particular in indicating that only the first 100 yards going east to west of this location is considered commercial. That's because the rest of the property in the back was wetlands or something like that. Again, that spot zoning, if you will, that led to a lot of confusion. And if you didn't have this insert and be able to read the legend and follow this, you didn't know what it was. That's where you really get the change from that intersection from 44 and 74 from, again, individual blocks and spots into an area of commercial zoning, so to speak. Mike, I think this is great. And you said you worked with the assessor to ascertain who is and who is not commercially zoned?
Well, so the assessor's records are the ones that are sort of how the discrepancies came to light. So
Yep.
she had gone through the original legal, or not legal description, but the text descriptions that you referenced, and that was what was in her property record cards. But obviously there are several parcels on the draft map that aren't contained there, and she was trying to reconcile that, and I didn't have an answer for her. So we went through the legal written descriptions ourselves to create this map. And so there are places where they don't follow property lines because we have something like a width of 200 feet along, whatever, this route or between this street or whatever. So some of this stuff might look funky because of that. But yeah, the assessor's the one who sort of got me keyed in on the fact there were these issues at play.
Well, any discussion, any input from the commissioners?
Well, I'll
Janet?
just say it's about time. And I think it's totally unfair to have somebody buy something as commercial and then discover, oh, all of a sudden it's not. So, I agree with you, Mike. Absolutely.
And I guess I will say, just for the record and anybody who's listening, we're not adding anything to this. So the draft current map that we've all been using and the old map, we've put those together. but there is no property that on those maps was shown residential that we're now creating a commercial zone. So this is not, if you compare them one for one, we're not adding anything to this. This is not really trying to do any new zoning initiatives. We're just trying to do basically a record keeping endeavor.
And what would be the process if someone bought a RA residential area and wanted to turn it into commercial? They would have to go through, obviously, they have to go to planning and zoning to try and get that change done.
Yeah, so in that scenario, it's less of an issue because these properties were zoned commercial and then the newer map sort of made them residential. And so they would be going to a more intense zoning designation. So they would ask for a zone change and they would have to convey to the commission why that would be appropriate. The more compute challenging part would be somebody that bought commercial and wanted to
go to this
continue
residential.
as commercial, and we're saying, no, you're residential. And they're saying, well, when I bought this property in 2012, I looked at the zoning map and I talked to staff and they told me it was commercial, and now you're telling me you've changed that. And that's where it gets a little bit trickier.
Okay. All right. So again, I'm wondering what the consensus is of the commission. Obviously, as Janet said, it is about time. It's great that this has come together. It's great that we've got the assessor's office and the land use office in sync on this. And we need the document. And it does include things like the Lake District and some of the other areas that were not indicated, and some areas that were indicated, such as recreational areas that I don't know where that came from in any type of regulations previously. Uh, so basically, Mike, we would need to, this is an text change to the regs, so we would need to have a hearing on this.
Yeah, so if this makes sense, what we would do is schedule a public hearing and do all the, notification, et cetera. And then the commission could adopt this, or they could adopt an amended version at a subsequent meeting. So that there would be no other action required tonight except for the commission to agree that it's to schedule a subsequent hearing at a subsequent meeting.
Don't make me ask your names again, please. I'll volunteer. What you think?
I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Jerry.
I agree.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, it looks good.
Michael, thank you.
Me
Yep.
too.
Janet, Steve. Anything from Nord or Doug?
I'm good.
Okay. Nord,
No.
you're still muted.
We
There you
need
go.
this.
Yes. Okay. So we're all in agreement, Mike. Let's go forward with this for having a public hearing, getting this into the regs,
Okay,
and yeah, moving forward.
will do.
All right. Zoning officer report. Anything you want to share? It's been your night, so take a drink of water, give us some more info.
I think I'm tapped out. I mean, if anybody has any other specific questions, but we've got a lot of stuff going on, and just been a lot of things just with some properties, not necessarily from an enforcement standpoint, but just stuff that has demanded a lot of time, and working with the fire department on some things, and just, the zoning map and figuring that stuff out, and just some other stuff with wetlands and POCD. So I've been busy, but not necessarily from an enforcement standpoint necessarily.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for all the information tonight. Really appreciate it. Again, thank you for the subcommittee working on the POCD. Thank you for the committee for your reviews. Hopefully we've captured most of those changes, and we'll put our heads together to get that finished off and have something for you for the next meeting to see with an official impact date or effective date for July 14th after our meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Jerry moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
This is Mike. I can
Stephanie
second.
got the second. Stephanie got it. All those in favor signify by
Aye.
saying aye.
Aye.
Fine.
I don't hear a nay in the group. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your work. And we'll see you again. Take care.
Good night, everyone.